In March of 2017, Stephanie Decker had a double amputation. One leg was removed just above the knee, the other just above her ankle. Decker had been in a tornado in her own home, and she was injured when she threw herself over her two children, ages 5 and 8. To protect them, she sacrificed herself and lost both feet, part of both legs. Why would somebody do that? It's not really hard to answer, is it? A mother loves her children, and whatever it takes, she was willing to do. When you think about that, think about the Apostle Paul. Has there ever been anybody more fired up, more dedicated? When Paul writes about keeping the fervor, your spiritual fervor, he has a right to write about that, right? I mean, he has done that. And certainly Jesus was dedicated and enthusiastic and fired up and gave everything. But one of the things I admire about Paul is how long he did that. 30, 40 years Paul went through all sorts of things and just kept getting back up and going back at it and trying no matter what was happening. Let me share a couple of scriptures with you. The first one is 2 Corinthians chapter 6. It's a list of some of what Paul endured. You're probably familiar with it, so maybe I'm just telling you what you already know. As servants of God, he says, we commend ourselves in every way. That's not as boastful as it sounds. In great endurance, in troubles, in hardships, distresses, in beatings, imprisonments, and riots, in hard work, sleepless nights, and hunger, in purity, understanding, patience, and kindness, in the Holy Spirit, in sincere love, in truthful speech, and in the power of God, with weapons of righteousness in the right hand and the left. And he goes on down to say, he was known, yet regarded as unknown, dying, and yet we live on, beaten, and yet not killed, sorrowful, yet always rejoicing, poor, yet making many rich, having nothing, and yet possessing everything. Paul went through so much for so long, but managed to not lose his spiritual fervor. I'd kind of like to know how. I'd like to get in on that. I'd like to be more like that. Can you imagine a church full of people with that kind of dedication and commitment, that kind of spiritual fervor? Back up a chapter with me to 2 Corinthians 5. Paul gives us, I think, some insight into how he was able to stay fired up. Verse 14, for Christ's love compels us. Christ's love compels us. Notice that he is not saying that his love is what motivated him, though that's important, but Paul says, I am compelled, I am pushed forward, I have to do what I'm doing because Jesus the Christ loved me so much. He goes on to write, because we are convinced that one died for all, and he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. Paul was no longer living for himself, but for the one who had loved him enough to die for him. And he says that love pushed him on and compelled him. What if we all were that motivated by the love of Jesus? How do you get there? How do you feel more compelled by the love that God through Jesus has had for us? Well, Hebrews 10:24 says to think about how to spur each other on to loving good deeds, and that's probably important. But I think what Paul's getting at may be more closely related to a parable that Jesus told. In Luke 7, Jesus is described as being at a Pharisee's house for dinner. And this lady with a bad reputation comes in and starts just crying and washing his feet and pouring out expensive perfume on him. And the Pharisee is a little disconcerted by that and thinks that this is inappropriate and wonders what she's doing in his house. And Jesus, on that occasion, as he often did, tells a little parable. Two people owed money to a moneylender, one of them 500 denarii and the other 50. One of them $40,000 and the other $4,000. And Jesus says, the moneylender, the credit card company, forgave the debt. Who do you think would love the moneylender, the company, more? The one who had a small debt forgiven or the one who had the $40,000 debt forgiven? It's a pretty obvious answer, and the Pharisee got it. The one who recognized how much had been done for him is the one who would be more motivated to love in return the one who had shown him kindness and love. Jesus goes on to explain to this Pharisee, I came in your house and you didn't really do anything for me. You didn't even offer to wash my feet or give me water to. This lady hasn't stopped crying on my feet and washing my feet. She has been forgiven so much that she is highly motivated. What about us? How can we be more highly motivated, more fired up by recognizing how much Christ has loved us? In the comments today, share your thoughts. How do we capture that feeling of being the one with the huge debt that's been forgiven? Paul described himself to Timothy as the chief of sinners. Paul knew how much he had done to fight against Jesus and the church. He also knew what it felt like to be forgiven. What do you think we can do to capture more of that feeling, to be more compelled by the love of Christ? I look forward to seeing what you have to say in the comments. Thanks.